Hello everyone and welcome to Module 7, Video 3. Today we're going to talk about connecting with a god and with the gods in general, okay? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you an example of various ways to connect with a god, and in this example I'm going to use particularly Thor, okay? And this is because he's very approachable and he's the recommended first god to start building a relationship with, really. We've also talked about Freya, and also Freyr also seems to have a very pleasant personality to work with. But remember, heathenry is about relationship and reciprocity. The gods are not some sort of bank that you go to when you want something. They're not your piggy bank in the sky. They are about relationship and reciprocity, okay? If you want something from them, you give to them first, okay? Now, there's lots of ways to connect with a god, and these are examples, some of which will come from the lore, some of which will just be ways that other religious groups connect with gods, and so on, okay? So what I'm going to suggest you do, particularly if you're a beginner, is you commit to working with a god for 1 year, okay? Just one god for 1 year. So it's not overwhelming, okay? So say that's, for instance, Thor, okay? Research all about him, okay? Read his myths, look into all the lore you can about him. Put an image of him on your shrine or altar, okay? Whether that's a picture that you print out or an actual physical image. Pray to him, give offerings, especially on Thursdays and also maybe on new or full moons, okay? So you'll honor him quite a few times, at least 4, 5, 6 times a month, okay? Get a hammer to wear, okay? We know that even ancient heathens wore hammers. It's not just a modern day fashion statement, okay? And when you're putting it on in each day, ask his protection over your life, okay? When you're putting it on in the morning. During the year, try to hold rituals to him on the key festivals and make him the main focus, okay? And see how his presence in your life changes over the seasons, okay? Now, think about whether any of his myths correspond with certain times of the year. For example, Thor destroying the serpent of winter. Could you include that in your rituals in some way in early spring, okay? Research how the god shows up in folklore and any key dates associated with them. So we talked about March, the 3 Thursdays of March being for Thor, and March being Thor month. We talked about the 29th of July, St. Olaf's Day, when people would pray for the lightning and the thunder to help the crops. Could you do something on those particular days, particularly to honor him? Go into nature to an oak tree, which is associated with Thor, and give an offering to him there. Okay, obviously make sure it's a biodegradable thing, something that's going to not hurt nature in any way, but give an offering to him at the oak tree. If you have a garden, well, call on him for helping growing food, or even start a garden in his honor. Contemplate the ethical principles he stands for. Things particularly like protection of others, and consider and protection of his mother, for instance, the environment. Consider how you can apply them in your life. You could make a piece of art or poetry or song or story or dance for him, maybe 1 per month throughout the year. You can make a playlist of songs you associate with him or that you can use to sing praise to him, okay? And there are songs maybe on YouTube that you can get that are for honoring Thor. Consider writing a new myth about him, perhaps associating him with a local place in your landscape, okay? Somewhere maybe, I don't know, a hilltop or something, or a special tree or something like that, I don't know. Consider writing about him, ask him for inspiration for that. Help the earth, his mother, in some way, okay? Consider ways to give money to causes he would approve of. Things that are very much about protecting and defending, things that are about the environment, things that are about the weather, and there's all sorts of things you could do. Okay, ask him to speak to you in dreams and to guide you. Maybe you could write some prayers of gratitude and love to him that you can pray regularly. And maybe you could create a set of prayer beads where you have particular prayers for particular beads, and then you, as you touch each bead in your hands, you say that particular prayer. A bit like the sort of malas and the Buddhists have, and the Catholic rosaries and things like that. You could prepare a short prayer mantra that you can say throughout the day to keep mindful of him. So maybe, I don't know, Thor be with me, or I don't know, something like that. You could come up with some sort of short prayer mantra that you just repeat in your mind silently at different times during the day, just to remember him, basically. You could consider trying contemplative prayer. Okay, so what this means is you go into meditation and then you repeatedly chant his name until you feel his presence. And maybe you could play thunderstorm music at the same time to sort of create that atmosphere as well. Okay, so that's sort of contemplative prayer. You could research every one of his names and kennings in the lore and recite them regularly, again, as a contemplation of him. You could do some devotional chanting. So a few lines of prayer or praise repeated over and over again with devotion in a candlelit room. If you're trying to see an example of this, if you have a look at the Taize, T-A-I-Z-E community, they do this. This is a Christian community that does this, where they have a candlelit rooms and they repeatedly pray like 3 or 4 lines, or even a couple of lines, over and over again, as prayers or praise. Okay, so you consider doing something like that. You can have a special prayer or offering to Thor whenever there's a thunderstorm. Okay, whenever I hear a thunderstorm, I often go like, "Hail Thor," and maybe I'll pour out some mead for him. But you could have something like that. Do fasting in his honor or as a sacrifice to him on Thursdays. Okay, so something where you're doing something to sacrifice, basically, for him. Consider taking up things like strength training or martial arts in his honor, or even choosing a career in his honor, like policing or something like that, something protective. And learn how the weather works. You learn how he works, basically, through that. So those are loads of different ways that you could use to connect with Thor. And I recommend that you choose maybe a couple to start with, but try and include as many as you can over that period of the 12 months or a year period. And then when you've done it with one god, you can maybe do it with a different god. A lot of these things can be associated with a different god instead, okay? But some of them seem more specific to Thor. You might have to change things up a little bit if you're going to use a different god. Okay, so that's ways that you can communicate with and honor a god and really build a strong relationship with them. Now, there's a book by Dale Cannon of West Oregon University. It talks about these 6 ways of being religious. Okay, and you can use these to inspire you in your actions and how you honor the gods. Okay, you can have all of these, you can have just some of them, but it gives you different ways, and different ones might fit people and people's personalities different. So see what appeals to you. So the first one is the way of sacred rite. This means basically doing rituals. Okay, and we're going to talk about rituals in a later module, and how to do them, how to think about them, what's the theology behind them, that sort of stuff. What did they do in the olden days, in the ancient times? Then there's the way of right action. This is all about living morally, okay, doing the right thing, making sure you've got the ethics that fit with your religious beliefs. The way of devotion. This is about emotional worship and surrender to the gods or deities or spirits or whoever, okay? This is very much the emotional worship. Then you've got the way of shamanic mediation. This is about receiving spiritual power and vision, of mediating between this world and the spirit world. You go into altered states of consciousness. You go to meet spirits or to meet gods and do that sort of thing. There's the way of the mystical quest, which is going inward to experience the divine. Okay, you're trying to get an experience of them inside. The contemplative prayer ideas come into this. Okay. And then you've got the way of reasoned inquiry, which is study, seeking the truth through rational inquiry. So this could be doing philosophical exercises. It could be reading the lore, reading the myths, and trying to understand. Okay, reading archaeology even, or about archaeology and that sort of thing. Okay, trying to use your mind and your brain to be religious. Okay, so these are 6 different ways that you could use to practice heathenry, okay, and to connect with the gods. So finally, let's just talk about a few tips, okay? So firstly, go to the god you have a relationship with when you want something, rather than just because they're associated with that thing. If you have a relationship with, say, Thor, and don't go to Freyr for help in the garden, even though Freyr is associated with fertility. Well, so is Thor. If you have a relationship with Odin, and you need some help and protection, some courage, well, don't go to Thor about that, even though he's associated with those things. Go to the god, basically, you have the relationship with, the one who you've spent time with, built up relationship with, given lots of offerings to, because they're more likely to be interested in you and to help you, okay? You don't ask a stranger for a favor. They're not going to help you. You actually have to build that relationship first, okay? Offerings, okay? They will expect something from you. This is not a religion of, like Christianity, where you just pray and expect things to happen, okay? This is a reciprocity, a gift giving, a sacrifice religion. Okay, this is all about you give something and then they give something, and it could be something small, okay, and then maybe a promise to give something bigger if they answer you in the end. But they will expect something from you first. Okay, prayers you can speak from the heart, or like we said when we were talking about prayer in one of the earlier modules, you can try writing a poetic prayer. Okay, using some of the meter and the alliteration of things that they used in the past. You could consider daily praying the Sigdrifa prayer. Okay, the one that says, hail day, hail the sons of day, hail night and her daughters, hail to the gods and goddesses and the all-giving earth, etc. Okay, you could pray that prayer every day. You could consider having a morning prayer to Suna or to Eostra as the goddess of the dawn, and then an evening prayer to Mani, the god of the moon. So these are ways to bring prayer into your daily life, basically. And you want to really try and find ways to bring the gods into your daily life every day. So you can have prayers and blessings that you say when you wake up, when you shower, when you leave the house, before you have meals, before you sleep, and at any other time that's important during the day. Okay, try to maybe write some prayers that you can say at that time, or repeating your mantra if you have a mantra for the god, etc. And as mentioned previously, try to give to the spirits for a year and a day to build up a relationship before you start asking for things. Now, it might not always be possible to do it that way, and you are going to want to ask them for things, but certainly the idea behind this is you're focusing more on the relationship, not on what you can get out of it, okay? And spending a year and a day building that relationship first before you start asking things is a good way to sort of set that expectation. So, homework for this module. Firstly, you need to read up about a particular god or gods that you feel called to honor. Okay, I recommend, if you can get hold of it, Artroth Volume 2, Heathen Gods, the 3rd edition, okay, the 2021 one. It is more expensive than the older editions, but the older editions don't have anywhere near as much information. It's sort of basically double the amount of information and a lot more different gods and spirits covered in this new book. So try and get hold of that 2021 version, okay? Also, purchase a book on the Norse myths and start reading about the gods. You could get hold of Snorri's The Prose Edda, or you could get other books on the myths. But remember that sometimes these other Norse myth books aren't necessarily accurate in all aspects, okay? So don't take them as gospel. And then importantly, start making regular prayers and offerings to one or more gods, either on Thursdays or monthly on the first crescent moon. Okay, that's sort of the start of the month. Have some prayers and offerings for them on that day. And then I highly recommend you read Terry Gunnell's link, Pantheon, What Pantheon, on academia.edu. And it basically sums up that argument I've been trying to make throughout this module of there wasn't a great big pantheon that everybody worshipped. Everything was very much more localized, regional, different gods are important to different communities and families, okay? And you choose the ones that you want to be honoring, okay? So I highly recommend that. And then if you want some further reading, you've got Gods and Myths of Northern Europe by H.R. Ellis Davison. Brilliant, especially if you're into the Norse side of things. The Elder Gods by Stephen Pollington is a brilliant book if you're interested in the Anglo-Saxon side of things. And Pagan Goddesses in the Early Germanic World by Philip Shaw it really helps for the Anglo-Saxons, but really it's interesting for everybody. It does have quite a lot of stuff on linguistics, which you might want to sort of try and skip past at the beginning, but the rest of the book is really good. Okay, so I highly recommend you read those, but definitely do the homework that I've got there and try and read the Prose Edda and at least some of Artroth Volume 2, Heathen Gods, okay, from 2021. Thanks very much, and we shall see you in the next module.